Hey everyone, it's your girl Maddie here, aka Beaver Mosh, and today I am joined by Max of Sublation, who has a new EP on the way on the Advancement of Decay. Max, how are you doing tonight, and what's going on?
I'm doing pretty well. A little
Yeah,
tired, it's been a long week, still working, but
yeah,
doing well. Thank you for asking.
yeah, for sure. Thanks again for joining the program. Well, first off the bat, I've seen your music listed, labeled in a lot of places, including your Metal Archives profile, as a tech death band, and I'm wondering, from what I kind of know about you, do you reject that label? Because I feel like when I listen to the EP, there is a collection of a different metal styles coming up for me. Is that accurate?
We definitely tr- we tried to go under the term like blackened death metal or blackened tech death.
Yeah.
Something like I would consider something like In Full Darkness to be something that I think we would want to be associated in the same ballpark of.
Mhm.
But people just start hearing fast guitar and just automatically call you tech death,
Yeah.
and that's fine. There are things that we always, at least in my opinion, try and mix things up. And so there are things that we do that I would not consider to be standard tech death, but most people just think we're tech death, and that's totally
Mhm.
fine. As for the EP that we put out, it really, and the thing that I'm excited about to me is that it is what it is because it couldn't be anything else.
Sure.
We had basically, while recording the Path to Bedlam, Danny had the idea that wouldn't it be cool if someone made a release that changed production styles as it went along?
Hmm.
And I got really fixated on that idea for about a year after he said it. And then in the summer of last year, I said, I'm going to put 6 weeks aside, and that's what I'll work on every single day. And that's what came together. And so it's something that with the production, it made sense for it to not be just straight tech death, because I,
Hmm.
I honestly think that if you just did straight tech death and just changed the production style from song to song, people would go, why does half of this sound like shit? You definitely need to have types of music that benefit those sort of like elongated soundscapes.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about where did this idea for changing production styles come up from? Like, what where did that manifest from? And also, you're right. Like, I think like some of the more blackened sections of the EP lend themselves better to like a more raw production style than some of the more fast, technical aspects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was 100%. It started with Danny's just simple idea of, I think it would be cool if we just kept changing production styles as something went on. And as I just continued thinking about that, it just made more sense to me, just because different genres of metal do have their own styles of production.
Of course.
Part of what we do, in my own opinion, is we don't really like tech death production. A lot of it sounds nearly identical. A lot of it doesn't sound like an actual band ever played it live or could
Mhm.
play it live. And so one of the things, like with quantized drums and stuff like that, it's one of those things
Mhm.
where everything's so put to a grid that
Yeah.
we never wanted to do that again. When Danny and I have been playing music since 2008.
Hmm.
And when we first started doing it, we were very much a part of that tradition of everything's locked into a grid. Everything is very, you're editing single notes and copying pasted stuff. And part of that is because we were poor and couldn't afford to be at a studio for a month.
Yeah.
But on top of that, it was just the fact that that is the style. That is what people want to hear, question
Hmm.
mark. And so, yeah, definitely for us, it made sense to me that we can make something that would continue with what we're doing and then just move further into it. And definitely, even right now, like some of the lessons that we learned with this EP will definitely take into the next thing. But there's so much with the EP that I don't even know if we can incorporate everything. It's not really very logical, but it's definitely something that focusing on the production like that was the inciting incident, just the idea of the production. And then the theme really was the next thing. Is just I had a book on my bedside table, A Short History of Decay, and I went, what if all the songs are based on decay? What if from there we just had different styles of metal music that all have not what I would consider decaying qualities of audio, but certainly there's a decay of clarity,
Sure.
and because of that, I felt that, having it end with basically an atmospheric black metal track as the goal, was, something to work towards. And I thought that would be cool.
It's interesting, hearing you talk about production, because I know exactly what you're describing when you talk about that very exact sound. And you're right. Like, I don't want to say this in a way that makes me come across as like a metal elitist, but I do cover underground stuff more because that's what I prefer.
Yeah.
And when I see what is popular in mainstream metal, you talk about, like, I don't know, your Warner Shores. It is a lot of, you hear a lot of triggers, but very like robotic guitars. And I think, sure, people want that, that's fine. But when I listen to that, everything is just given to me up front, and there's no reward for actually giving it a concentrated listen. Like, it's just like there's nothing to discover here.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And, and that is, it's the landscape, and that's it even gets into, like, I don't know how much you care about mastering things, but, like when it comes to mastering your album, there are expectations that the decibel levels are going to be real fucking loud. People are putting out albums that are just like, they're so much louder than they used to be in the 90s even, and so it's one of those things where it's like, not only is your tech death album competing with every other tech death album, but also it's competing with the production standards of pop music, because it has to be just fucking loud as it. Again, it's something that we think about probably too much. But at the same time, I don't know. We're getting to a point where we're putting out the stuff that I'm the most proudest of musically.
Yeah.
And that's super exciting, and that I think having production that matches what we're trying to accomplish, I think really helps that.
So you do acknowledge there are tech death elements and there are black metal elements. Anything else that specifically off the top of your head, yeah, we brought this type of metal or really any other genre of music into this EP?
I mean, I had a like 6-song Spotify playlist that I wrote to every day. And so basically what it was is I knew how I wanted it to change. And so it started off with literally an In Full Darkness song. And then after that, I wrote all the music in order. Lyrics are the hardest thing in the entire planet. So that, of course, takes forever. And so none of that was written in order. Like that always takes forever. But all the songs were written in order, which was super cool to do. You'd be working on something like song 2, I'd be writing, and I would come up with a counterpoint and go, that's cool, but I think that would make sense as the lead for song 5. So we'll do that in 2 weeks. But yeah, and so starting off with song 1 is just pretty much straight tech death with blackened elements. After that, straight up just a Belphegor song was the next like thing of inspiration. And then after that, Satyricon, just because in general, fucking love Satyricon. Like, they're the greatest, just some of the best riffs, and a lot of how we do harmonies and stuff like that, especially on the EP, is totally ripped off of Satyricon. And then after that, another S band, Cethereal, is one of my like probably top 3 black metal bands of all time. The album Nord, I just think, is the greatest thing ever done. And then right after that is Void Sphere, just because I think in terms of atmosphere, they're the greatest. And so it was just all about each day kind of moving towards that type of thing, and you would bang one out and then kind of move in. And so it went from like, tech death, blackened death metal, I think most people call Belphegor, and then after that, a lot of I think of them as like a rock band, Satyricon, at this point. Like they're just like some dad rock and riffs, and I'm just like, hell yeah, brother. So yeah, after that you have standard, just like most people call that black metal, but I think of it as rock and roll. And then after that, you're going into more melodic black metal, and then just straight atmospheric black metal was kind of the goal, to like pivot from one to the next.
Yeah. You're bringing up Satyricon. I recently re-listened to Dark Medieval Times not too long ago, and those early Satyricon records,
yeah,
I mean, they're so early in the evolution of black metal, but even like if you listen to them today, they still hold up as like, if they released that today, people would be going crazy for it. Like it sounds so ahead of its time. Like those soundscapes they were putting up, like genius, honestly.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, they're absolutely incredible. Yeah, and it is one of those things also where it's, like, I do think that every artist reaches that point where I think they kind of like have an understanding of themselves, or have come to some sort of like distillation of the idea of what they're doing, and the ability that Satyricon has now to write a song where the chorus is just like one line. I find that to be the most inspiring thing in the entire planet, because like, of course, like I can write a chorus that has like a billion words, and sure, they all flow kind of well, but anyone can do that. To just have your chorus just be "die by my hand," is just so good. and that's something that, I mean, definitely I don't think I have the ability to channel, but God, they're always in the back of my mind. Belphegor is always in the back of my mind as well. Like, I love Belphegor.
And it's also really interesting to see the bands from that early black metal scene that have stuck around and are still coming in, how they've evolved. I mean, you go get like, Dark Throne going crust punk, but also Enslaved, like they started out as like just a straight up black metal band, and all of a sudden now you look at what they're doing now, and they might be better than they were back then, and they're making these big epic progressive metal odysseys.
Yeah, did you hear Satyricon last year put out that project with an installation artist, and so it was like there were riffs in it, but it was also just drone music.
Like, I think I might have missed that, to be honest. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I will go check it out then.
Just one song and just noise, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's a cool riff, and then just noise again. Yeah, really cool and inspiring stuff. Yeah, I was super excited for it. A lot of people were just, why are they doing this? And I was like, I don't care. It's something else.
I've noticed that sometimes, like, because I'm very active on Twitter, I'll hype up something like that that's very odd intentionally and out there and kind of noisy, and realize, oh, this is my weird ass state. This is not correct for everybody.
Oh yeah,
but that's part of the fun.
Oh yeah, and that is, I mean, definitely, like, I don't know, I feel the more you're exposed to art and think about art critically, I do think you get to a point where you just start, you're tired of the normal stuff, and you're give me something fucking weird, my guy. And I mean, getting back to like Tech Death production, I love the Artisan era. They're a great label. All their albums fucking sound the same, And so every time that they sign a new band that has slightly different production, even, I'm like, oh, what a breath of fresh air. Like, what a crazy thing this is, And so it is something that I definitely know, because there are certain templates out there, you're just looking for something new, And that is something that, like, I don't know, I definitely look for that in metal music, just because I've heard so much fucking metal music. I've played so many shows, I've toured around the country. Like, I'm looking for something different. That's why, my favorite album of the year is it's by Big Chef. It's a fucking album that, like, anytime I show it to anyone, they're like, really? This is what you think is the best album of the year? And I'm like, yeah, dude, it's fucking weird as hell. But, like, I'm glad that dude did it. Like, just super bizarre. That album starts with an hour-long track that's just like synthwave, and it's just a loop, and that's it. And then it's an 18-minute grind album. But it's just one of those things where it's so unhinged after that weird synthwave track, and I'm just all about it. It's just something so different.
There was a record that came out very early this year, and I don't remember what it's called. I could probably look it up, but it was this very raw, very raw black metal record about like old 15th century architecture, and it sounded like it was recorded in the 15th century in a church. Like, it was so so lo-fi, and I heard it like, oh wow, this is cool. Like, like they're really creating a setting here, and I thought
Yeah.
it was kind of majestic in a way. And then so like I had my view like this is pretty cool, and then the next day I see a bunch of people like, what the hell is this? You can barely hear it. This is like what? I'm like, oh, I liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coastal Towers, right?
And like, I think that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. I have it on tape. It's no big deal. That was one where I was like, I think I hear a riff and I think I hear some drums. This fucking rules, man.
Yes. We're glad we're on the same page there.
Yeah, that was one. And again, like just people trying like truly interesting things.
Yeah.
Danny and I talk about that a lot just because, we have a fair amount of friends that have gone on to do some pretty huge things, and we talk about what it is that people consider to be pushing the genre forward. You'll see people discussing like, how is metal gonna progress, what's the next big thing, and we talk about all the time. And one of the things that always drives me insane is that so often like people are just like, whoa, they really broke boundaries here by having a fucking saxophone. And it's just like, no dude, like the band's inspired by Pink Floyd. They finally added saxophone. I'm not shocked in any way whatsoever.
As if metal hasn't been incorporating jazz elements for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and
I mean,
so
go back to Cynic, like, yeah.
Yeah. and so it's one of those things where we definitely have talked about how you make music, how you produce music, what you're trying to go for. And in terms of like progressing the genre, so much of it just seems like take metal, add thing, whereas I don't know. And again, like with the EP, it seemed like a cooler idea to just be the same band and just explore what you can do sonically with metal. Because, we're not even touching the surface of what you could be doing with that. There's so many more things you could be doing with your production that still stays within metal, that's still inspired by metal, that's moving things around.
Yeah. Well, getting back onto your record, because we have acknowledged that while it's not strictly a tech death record, tech death is an element. And I've seen the complaint worded in a myriad of ways towards technical death metal as a whole, kind of as a broad statement that it's only playing fast. There's no feeling. It feels robotic. Can they write a song? What do you say to that when you hear it?
I mean, boy, there definitely is some tech death like that.
Oh, of course.
And I definitely, I still enjoy that stuff. I'll put on a Brain Drill album and just kind of like fucking stare off into the distance some days. Like there definitely is a lot of stuff like that. But I mean, the whole thing, I would say one of the things that I think about, I started off, as a teenager playing in, just like straight up rock bands. Yeah. And I was of the opinion that like shredding, playing real fast, I thought that was just like the most soulless trash in the entire planet. And one of the things that I realized is that it's all about context for it, and so as someone that I think technically shreds on the guitar, as someone that does that style of playing that I used to loathe, it makes sense in the context that we play. When your rhythm guitar part is at 225 beats per minute, it doesn't make sense for me to be playing some blues licks and be going, like there are things that make sense within the context of what you're doing, and that style of playing benefits that. And so it's one of those things where I personally have a lot of difficulty writing slower things. And that is even like, we have a song on the next thing that we're putting together that, it has maybe like 20 different sections in it. and I was feeling so good about it. I was like, man, like this is gonna be an epic. And then I look at it, like I bounce the file and send it to Danny so he can demo some drums, and it's like 3 minutes 20 seconds, and it's just one of those things where that's just what it is. Unfortunately, that is the style of music that I play. If I could play other things, I would. And so as for whether or not people could focus on hooks more and stuff like that, if that's what people want, 100% the genre could do that. And I think that a lot of people in tech death are aware of that. You look at a band like Archspire, for example. Their singer talks about how he puts the title of the song in the song. That way people have something to actually latch onto. And do I think you have to be that blunt with it? No, I don't. But there is at least a recognition of that, and that is something that I think, I don't know whether or not, I think most people consider them like melodic death metal. They're just like really complicated melodic death metal. But like Summoning the Lich, I think is a perfect example of a band that like their vocal rhythms are so incredibly neat and catchy. And I just think that people just have to be smarter with it. And I feel that way about death metal in general. That's why I don't listen to like a lot of like OSDM. I find so much of that stuff to just be like, and I hear it and I'm just like, where's the hook, my guy? Like, what rhythms am I latching onto? Because you can speak in a rhythmic language that can be catchy, and people just for some reason choose not to. I don't know why, but they don't. And so it is something that, I think every genre in metal could probably work on having some hooks. Not everyone is like trad metal. Trad metal's got hooks. Like they're killing it with that. And most are not working on that, I feel like.
Look, I am a black metal fanatic. That is my bread and butter. That is my favorite genre of metal. But I've heard plenty of black metal records here that are just like, so evil, so cool. Like what is going on here? There's nothing. It's just boring. It's just like the same thing, right? Like, every metal genre has its like just formula followers that don't really do anything interesting.
And definitely, like tech death as a whole, just being a shit ton of just people playing notes. Like, a lot of it is that. And it is something, I mean, I don't know. I do also think that, the race for who's the fastest, that feels like it's dying. And I am pretty thankful for that, because that was definitely something, back when I started like really caring about guitar in like 2008. That's when we had all those videos where people were like, speed guitar playing Flight of the Bumblebee 900 beats per minute, and I feel like that ship has sailed. We're not caring about that too much.
And then my favorite, but can they play Wonderwall meme? That's classic comment. Yes. It's so that criticism feels in my mind like it almost mirrors like that very cool kid look at music history where they say, oh, there was this overstuffed prog rock stuff that's so not cool, and then punk hit, and then punk set things right because they returned to like what rock and roll meant, and like, and I believed that for a time. Then I'm like, but now I'm like, that's bullshit. Like there was so much. First of all, I just like prog rock more than punk, but even though I don't take that the wrong way. I love plenty of punk music, but like these broad, sweeping, like epic pieces that like Yes and Rush and Genesis were putting together. How can you think that was like boring? I don't know where that consensus came from, but it kind of sounds like people are almost like taking that logic and now bringing it into the metal world when they talk about tech death.
Yeah, I mean, I think I am one of those people that sadly am of the side that I do think that, and part of it is the amount of time it takes. I do lament that the chaos of music is not present in tech death. One of my favorite bands of all time is Anonothrach. I think they are just bar none like the greatest metal band that has ever existed.
Oh yeah.
There's nothing that will ever surpass them in my mind. And one of the things that I love about them is they have fake ass drums. They have the craziest production, but those guitar solos sound like dog shit. And I love it so much. Like, it is just a person being told, play as fast as you can. And he's like, but I can't play that fast. But he's still going as hard as he can. And it just sounds like it is, it's Kerry King on crack. And
Yeah.
that is something that I just absolutely love. I love, and that's that punk rock element. It is that inability to truly play something really crazy, but you're still going for it anyway.
I love that.
Because
Yeah.
you were told to do that. And that is something, again, it just takes time. Like, I have a mind where, like, I hate the idea of putting down something that's going to suck. And I hate the idea of how long it would take for everyone to sit around for me to find something that doesn't suck. So I would rather just spend, it can take me like 2 months to write a guitar solo. So I would rather just spend 2 months at home doing that than going into the studio every fucking day and playing something that I don't know how it's going to turn out. Could something really cool come out? Of course. But unfortunately, I think that that's the side of tech death, is that, they don't play anything raw. They don't play anything crazy. And it gets into the drums as well, because all that shit is quantized and it's all to a fucking grid, but that rawness 100% is not in tech death, and you do feel it in so many other genres of metal, that chaos, that it feels like, the wheels are about to come off in the best possible way. So I 100% understand that criticism. Like, it's something I do wish we had more of that.
Yeah. I think maybe like what a Nell Rock does, and that was like very similar to like what a Pink Floyd does, and like what even maybe some tech death bands do, is that like there is this difference in approach, but they're all very much creating a very textured music, which is something that I think as a listener, I'm drawn to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can 100% see that. And that is, they're a band that, as the years have gone on, their production changed so drastically.
Yeah.
Like, as my favorite era is when they started adding more electronic elements. Once they just started adding like that, fucking just weird electronic drum sounds. Absolutely obsessed with that. But again, like, I do think it's all in the service of something that sounds more raw, sounds more chaotic, sounds more aggressive. And yeah, I do wish tech death had more of that, but it just again, I don't know how you could do it without it just costing an arm and a leg. If Arch Spire just sat down and did improvised guitar solos for their style of music, they would have to book an extra 2 months, I feel like.
Well, I want to go through the history of your band a little bit, because it existed as a time as Fisthammer for a handful of years. And then you took, I think, like 5 years off and came back at Sublation. Do you kind of want to walk me through some of the details there, some of the evolution you went through as a band?
Yeah, I mean, so this started out, I want to say, in my memory, we started jamming like summer of 2007. And we put out our first demo in like 2008. And at that point, it was just me writing what I could write with death metal. Like, you're just trying something for the first time, and all the best songs end on the album. It's not whether or not it makes sense as an album or anything like that. It's just like, oh, we have 10 songs, an album should be 10 songs. And so it was very much us figuring out what we were doing. We very naively immediately started touring. We were a MySpace band, and back in the day,
MySpace
venues just had MySpace pages, and you could just hit up a venue and be like, "Hey, you're in Texas, and could you set us up with a show and some bands to play?" And you could just do that. So we just booked tours through MySpace, and we did that for a while. And that was, I mean, we were booking tours through MySpace, I want to say, for 4 years. And those years were crazy, and it was great. And then after that, we put out the first real full length, which was Devour All You See. It got mediocre reviews, which I understand, and it's something, that I think we are returning to and also straying away from at the same time. A lot of what I thought death metal was, or at least what we were doing with death metal, I think a lot of it was based around like rock albums. And so I definitely think that, we had this idea that, you put a ballad on a rock album. So like, let's have a melodic death metal song and that's our ballad. And people be like, what the fuck is this? And so that was definitely something where we just continued working with each other and trying to figure out what it is we should be doing. And then I think the second album that we put out was when we really started understanding, we definitely enjoy a lot more of these atmospheric elements that we can kind of bring in. Definitely a lot more like mixing in a lot of like thrash elements and stuff like that, and then having more of what we consider to be black and death metal sound. Again, up for debate, I guess. And it was at that point, I had depression for a very, very long period of time. And we were on tour, and I want to say 2014, something like that. Who knows what city we were in? It doesn't really matter. And it was one of those things where like we had guarantees and could make money touring, and that was cool. But I was just in some town and I was just like, I don't fucking care about any of this. Like, I
Yeah.
don't fucking care about anything. I'm up there playing music, and I used to be way harder on myself than I am now, but I who hated my playing, hated that it was me playing notes. And I just got to this point where I was just like, this is the fucking worst thing ever. And it just got to the point we got back from that tour, and I just like stopped showing up for rehearsals. And then it just got to a point where Danny was like, it seems like you don't want to do anything. And I was like, yeah. And then we didn't talk to each other for about 4 years. I basically, like, I was planning on moving to California and starting film school. The film school that I applied to went under.
Funny how the world works.
And so I just ended up like staying in Philly, and I was just like, cool, like let's just figure out what it is that I enjoy in life, because right now the answer is fucking nothing, my guy. And shortly after that, I started like putting myself together. I applied to school and stuff like that. I was enrolled in school and figuring stuff out. And then we have a third person that we write with question marks sometimes. His name is Kevin Welch. He was in Fisthammer. He also is he started a band called Conflict Theory, which is absolutely incredible. Kevin was the one that reached out to me and said, hey, Danny and I have been jamming. We want to do Fisthammer again. Would you be interested? And that was so far out of, I thought I was basically done with music. I was like, I felt like I had burned every bridge in that entire area. And it turned out that, it's all in your head, because it always is, and so I was incredibly grateful, and I was like, hell yeah, so October of 2019 we started jamming again. It was me, Danny, and Kevin wrote some of the stuff on Path to Bedlam, and some of the stuff is that he wrote another like one or two songs that'll be on the next thing. Kevin during COVID vanished. No one's heard from him in almost 2 years. So he does that though.
Sure.
As weird as that is to say, like this is not the first time. I would say in 2016 he vanished for a period of years, and then popped up in Rhode Island as a professional chef, and we were like, oh, hi Kevin. So sure, it's possible he'll pop up again, but Kevin was the person that invited me back, and I'm incredibly grateful. And would Kevin, we'd love to hear from you, of course. But yeah, and so when we decided to get back together, I think we had a greater understanding of what we should be doing and should not be doing. Because at that point, you have 20 songs underneath your belt. You can look at everything and go, that's trash, that's trash. I was 19 when I wrote that. Let's never do anything like that again. And so from there, it's just been kind of going further and further into what we enjoy doing, and Danny and I obviously have like a whole bunch of influences, and Danny's influences are definitely way different than mine are. Like I love black metal and Danny loves black metal, but not that much. He's not looking through the depths of the internet for black metal to check out. But definitely trying to add those things in more and more. And that's where the name change came from, was an idea that, just get a clean slate. Just, even if no one acknowledges that it's a clean slate, even if every single band is like, Fist Hammer's back, which we did definitely get a whole bunch of that. And we were like, hell yeah, thank you. It is something that, at least to us, it made sense just to distance ourselves from a lot of the, I would say, more melodic death metal stuff that we used to do.
I think when I hear you kind of describe this mindset, I relate a little bit. Like, please don't go watch. Please, we'll be watching at home. Don't go watch my older videos. I hate them. I didn't know what I was doing. I just like, let's make a channel I talk about metal, and I did. In a way, I'm proud of that. But I had no idea about video editing or anything. But I think now that I look back to it, I kind of think like, you kind of got to do it to figure out and word what works and what doesn't. And there's growth in that, and in any creative capacity.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's even, we last year, like, we did our first, it's the first music video that Danny and I ever did. We've been in people's music videos before. My sister had a music video and we are both in the background of that music video. So we've done music video shoots before, but we've never done one for any of our own music. And looking at the one that we did last year compared to the one we put out this year, huge growth. You're always going to see growth. And that's the most exciting thing, And no matter what you're doing, like, you do it for long enough, you're gonna start learning stuff. I think I finally figured out how to write a good guitar solo in like 2018. I was like, I think I got it. It's only been a decade of me playing death metal at this point.
Figured it out. Yeah. Well, you are self-releasing this, and I like to ask bands that do that, what advantages does it offer, and also what are the disadvantages?
I mean, the disadvantages, obviously, if you have a label, they're going to put they'll put more money into the physical releases. Physical releases are very expensive unless you're one of those bands that lies and does pre-orders when you didn't actually pre-order anything. And so that automatic amount of money that you have to put in, that definitely is a hindrance for many people, and a label's going to lessen that. A label also has the potential to put more money into a format that you probably wouldn't have considered. CDs are a very easy thing for us to order. Vinyl, that's a pretty big chunk of change. I don't know when we'll do that. We would love to. Misha's artwork for this album is fucking mind-blowing. I would love to see that as big as humanly possible. I'll probably order a poster at some point. But it is something that, just in general, a vinyl release is not something super feasible for us.
Sure.
The main thing with releasing it for ourselves, the way that we can justify it, is that we have a good PR company that we like working with. We've known them for a really long time. Clawhammer are great people.
Yeah, they send me promos all the time.
Yeah. They're great people that we, again, like, that's an old Fist Hammer contact, and super glad that they're still talking to us after all these years.
Yeah.
And so we obviously have a PR company that we can deal with. And then from that, the main thing is that you are not dealing with anyone's expectations of what you should be doing. I don't know if you had a label, you could go, hey, we want to make this thing that turns into a black metal album, because I having seen so far, there's only been one review, and the one review, the guy's like, do these two modes fit on the same short release? And it's like, I don't know, guy, you are the reviewer. You tell me if they fit on the same release, but we definitely did expect that. And I know for a fact that, labels might not want that type of thing. And then the number one thing, which is what happened with the last one, because we did get an offer from a label for the last release. It's all about when they want to release it. They fit it
Hmm.
into their schedule. It's not when you want to release it. And we, I guess, are impatient, or who knows. The more logical thing probably would have been to release this next year. However, we're not going to do that because we just don't feel like it. I asked Danny, I was like, do you just want to go for January? He's like, no, I'm sick of it. Let's put it out on the 8th. And you couldn't do that if you had a label. You would have to do what, like, we would probably be fit into, just so that they could make sure the rollouts for all physical releases happen properly. It would probably be sometime in April if we were with a label, with when we could get everything to them. However, it's just us. So December 8th, baby.
Yeah, I've heard the logic, and some people would probably tell you is that, like, you probably shouldn't put a record out in December because, like, a lot of publications have already written their end of year list.
Oh yeah.
But I'm like, that's dumb. Why not?
Yeah.
People are still listening to music in December,
Oh yeah.
And then, yeah, labels, they clearly had their calendar. They don't want to put out too much in a month because they don't want to, like, split attention from their releases. So of course they're gonna try to get it at a certain time frame, and I understand, like, we don't want to wait for that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and that's, I mean, the whole the hubris of thinking that you are exposed to every piece of music that's been released this year already is like insane to me, because again, Void Sphere put out an album on the 1st. Yes, according to the release date on the thing, it says the 27th, but they didn't send out emails until the 1st. And so it's just one of those things where it's like, that instantly is like one of my top 5 albums of the year. I'm obsessed with that band. Their last album I thought could not be beat. It hasn't been beaten, but at least the new one is tied with it. It is just an incredible record that 100% they don't do promo. No one knows they exist. They're not on Spotify. They're not anywhere. They're just on Bandcamp and physical releases. And it's just nerds like me who are obsessed with them that are just like waiting every day for the next thing. And surprise release in December. Like, here you go. And so it is one of those things where it's like, you see, like, when did Decibel put out their list? Like last month.
Yeah, it was so early.
Yeah. And it's just one of those things where it's like, I know they don't give a fuck about Void Sphere. I know that. But there are still so many things that we don't know are out there, and that it's disappointing, but like you said, it kind of is what it is.
And for viewers watching, there will be an end of your list from Beaver Mouse, absolutely. But it's not written. I'm still like, I'm still gonna consider December releases. Like, there is still so much. I have an idea of what it's gonna look like, but I'm still open for it to be destroyed by something. Something can fucking come out December 20th. It's like the best thing I've ever heard. Who knows?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was what was it called? Insomnia by, I don't know how to pronounce their name. Morokh. They're like a Russian black metal band. Like, I didn't know they had an album coming out, and they, I guess, don't have press. So like, I followed them on Instagram, and then just one day, there it was. It's like, we have an album coming out in 2 weeks. And I'm like, 2 weeks? Okay.
Yeah.
And they started rolling things out, but it's just, not every band has the budget. And, that, whether or not lists are even focusing on underground music, I mean, that's its own thing. Like, I feel like so many lists, again, Big Chef will be on so few. It is, but yeah, I understand that, like, a lot of lists are definitely just catering to the masses, and it kind of is what it is, but yeah, there's so much out there, and
so much good music.
Yeah, it's mind blowing, and that is you can drive yourself insane with it, and that's kind of good in some ways, but also, like, yeah.
Max, what's the best place to eat in Philly?
Ooh. What are you? I work in tourism, like hospitality. So like, I always say to anyone, I'm like, what are you interested in?
I'd love to try something I can only get in Philly, but like, I really love like Thai food, love Indian food, like those type of flavors.
Yeah. Ooh, man. Thai food, we COVID shut a lot of cool places down
I'm sure.
because we used to have a place called Circles that was in Philly that was very good Thai food. Um, and then there's a place, so definitely in general, like if you're in Philly, Tattooed Moms is just a staple. Like
Hmm.
in general, Tattooed Moms fucking rules. Their
Yeah.
food is great. They're great people. Like
What do
it
they
is just
serve?
they do have like a massive amount of vegan options if you are someone that cares about that. But it is, I mean, it's definitely like going to be a lot of bar food. Like they have pierogi nights and stuff like that. But
Love good greasy bar food.
oh yeah, but it is just like it's just a great bar. And again, like it's just been around for forever, and it's
Mm.
just like some of the things that they have are, you know, they've a cocktail that has pop rocks in it. Like it is
That sounds
just
amazing. What?
it is just so bizarre. First time I ever had a pickletini was there, and that just like absolutely blew my mind. I was like, the refreshment of pickle juice, and I'm getting drunk. What is this? Just absolutely, like that is a staple, and that's right on South Street. And in that
Yeah.
general area, there is also, I want to say it's called Golden Triangle, is
Yeah.
another Thai place that's in that area that's also very good. But yeah, I mean, the one place that that I suggest, just because obviously people come to Philly for cheesesteaks,
Mm.
in South Philly, there's a place called Phillips, and Phillips just like gives zero fucks. Like
Love that.
they've been around for forever. There used to be a metal venue called JR's Bar that shut down. It was mob run, like very obviously mob run, and they shut down just because like too much shit happened between them and the bands. like like just things started getting bad, and so they did end up shutting down. But right next to JR's Bar was a cheesesteak place called Phillips, and they're, you know, just like any cheesesteak place, open 24 hours a day, and it is just fantastic. Like absolutely love that place. They have a classic cheesesteak which has like, it has red hots on it, and it is essential Philly food in my opinion.
I love a good 24/7 hour place.
Oh yeah.
Something people might not know about these. I'm sober now. Wasn't always sober, and so I found myself at like a diner at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
many times,
Yeah.
and it was great.
Yeah, that's I've worked overnights the past like decade,
Yeah.
and it is one of those things where it's like when you have your days off, you still try and keep an overnight schedule.
Mhm.
And I have calmed down since COVID, but there was a period of time where it's like the only things that I was doing is going to like places that were open till like 4 a.m.
Mhm.
And so like the main the main places that you end up going are like next thing you know, like your friends mostly with strippers, and you're going to fucking cheesesteak places at like 5 a.m. And then when COVID happened, I was like, what am I doing on my
Yeah.
days off? Like, bro, like maybe you should chill out with this. Like maybe this is not the best scene to be in. But definitely, yeah, Philly has so many late nights places, and a lot of them have continued staying open, but you know, a lot of stuff shut down with COVID.
There's a place in Minneapolis. I don't go there that often because it's on like the other side of the city.
Mm.
Called Hard Times, and it's just like all vegan, cash only, grease spot. They're always playing like the most fucked up noise music, very loud. They're open 24/7. I think they might have actually changed to like open like 21 hours a day instead of, but it used to be 24/7.
Okay. Yeah.
And you go there, and it's like you get a big ass plate of like vegan biscuits and gravy and potatoes
Yeah.
for like $10. It's ridiculous, and they make their own hot sauce, and it's like
Yeah.
I tell anyone on my show who asks me the question back, that's where you got to go. That is a Minneapolis staple.
That's the number one. Okay.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Now my interest, I'm going to take this question even and kind of direct even more, is
Okay.
my fascination, my obsession with pancakes is very well documented on social media.
Yes.
Everyone knows that.
Yeah.
Like, even anyone who's like barely familiar with me on Twitter knows how much I like pancakes.
Okay.
So where do I go for good breakfast?
So there's like a, I would consider at this point it has so many locations that it is a chain at this point.
Mm-hmm.
There is a chain exclusive to Philadelphia, at least as far as I know, called Green Eggs that is
Okay.
very, very good.
Yeah.
As just like an evangelist for this place in the Reading Terminal Market, which obviously every human being that goes to Philadelphia should go to, because it's a place that all of us went to as teenagers and as children, and we've just always been there. And the Reading Terminal Market within it has a place called the Dutch Eating Place, and it's a Mennonite-owned diner, and it just anything you get there is going to be exceptional. They're obviously not open on Sundays. Mennonites is what it is, but any other day you can go there and just have something absolutely incredible. Green Eggs you suggest just because they have like some pretty off the wall stuff, like they have red velvet pancakes, which like you straight up are gonna like, you're gonna crap like red blood looking things for a very long period of time, and you're gonna be like, I got leftovers there one time and then I had them and forgot that they did that. And I was like, I'm dying. I am sick. What is going to happen? And then I was like, oh yeah, it's like all that red food dye. Like, never mind, you are fine. So yeah, that is, that is, I saw you shake your head aggressively. That is a staple of theirs, but in general, they are also just very good at breakfast food. Yeah.
I was shaking it because that sounded amazing, honestly.
Okay.
Not the poop thing. I'm not.
Oh yeah.
Not interested in that, but I am interested in the velvet pancake. That sounds incredible.
Yeah, it's insane.
Whenever I tweet like the link to an interview, I always like to try to like mention two off the wall things. They're like just like, we talked about the new record and then this, and right now I have Pop Rocks and red poop. That's what I got. So I think that's what we're doing.
Yeah,
okay. Well, I'm interested. You said you work in tourism. I'm not super interested in talking about day jobs, but I am interested in asking you, what do you do outside of metal? Like, well, do you have any hobbies? Like, what how do you like spending your time?
I mean, I obviously work 40 hours a week, but on top of that, I've been in school the past 4.5 years. Yeah. So that when I'm not doing this is the other thing that I'm spending most of my time on. I'm currently in the process of applying to master's programs.
Awesome.
So dealing with that. And so it is something, and that is, so I studied communication science and speech disorders, and looking to, ideally the goal was to go into research for communication science and speech disorders. That's a long path, but that is something. Communication theory, linguistics theory is something that I'm reading a lot about pretty constantly. Definitely, like, we're in the middle of this album cycle, and I've been, I make the video promo stuff and things like that. So right now I'm not reading as much as I would like to, but I do definitely read as much as I can about different theories within linguistics, just because it is something that obviously a lot of what we do is the more actual physical side. You're doing clinical work, you're actually experiencing the person and working towards whatever their communication goals are. But as far as just what I am passionate about, like linguistics theory is something that I've just always been passionate about for a really long period of time. And so, yeah, just read a lot about communication theory. Like, I was just reading a book on co-articulation this summer, which to me is super exciting and fascinating. And so it is something that's probably what I spend the most time doing. I mean, other basic stuff, like play video games, and like I watch like 2 movies a day at this point.
I love games myself. So I have a degree in journalism. And so I probably didn't get as like, I clearly didn't get in deep into linguistic theory as you, but I was introduced to, we read portions of text from Derrida, who was, like talked a lot about that type of thing. And of course, Marshall McLuhan. So I'm like kind of familiar with your world to a very small extent. Yeah.
And I love Derrida. Like, there is there is a Derrida scholar that follows us on Twitter.
Amazing.
Like, my boy. He wrote recently a book on Derrida, which I highly suggest. It's just a biography on him. It was very good. I cannot remember it off of the top of my head. I'm very sorry. But yeah, Derrida is absolutely incredible. And definitely as far as, there are different things that, and it happens with anything where, you are exposed to something that, it just opens up a new world and a new window to view everything, and for me, like Derrida was a huge one, a lot of his ideas, and it is something that you will end up finding things that disprove all of that. Like there are certain things, like I love my boy Derrida, but we have neuroscience now, and we can prove his theories wrong, unfortunately, which is what it is. But it is something that definitely, like, being exposed to him just like absolutely like blew a lot of things open in my mind, especially like his like metaphysical view was something that like really like changed a lot of things for me.
So like I grew up raised in a very evangelical household, and in and as I was like shedding my religious views, like in like high school and college, like Derrida's theories kind of helped me like think, oh, these are just words in the Bible, and I can kind of deconstruct it. And it was like very like helpful in that way. So I do kind of owe Derrida, your boy, some of that.
Yeah. No. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. While you were chatting about Derrida, I did pull up my phone and go up on Metal Archives and go into the theme search and look up if there are already metal bands that are Derrida themed. There are not. So this might be a challenge to somebody watching. If you search, look and start a band, that's a theme that has not been touched in the metal world. So maybe there's a door there.
Someone else can tackle that. We do our own thing. I don't think I'm ready for that. Yeah, and, I mean, Derrida's linguistic theory, and that is, you spend so much time online looking up theories. I was so obsessed with just going down a rabbit hole, and you read one book that references another book. So much of Derrida's own texts are references to other texts. He's very much writing in conversation with people that are alive, whether or not they want him to be or not. and so it is something that you end up going down these rabbit holes. And one of the things that I found super funny is, I was in a liberal arts honors program, and you talk to these people and they're so down with just like people just being into theories in general. And then as soon as I switched over to speech language pathology and you're in the science side of it, they're just like, oh yeah, no one believes that's garbage. like you're literally talking about like the black magic of communication science. There's it's I guess you can consider it like a semiotic theory. It's called sign signifiers, where the theory is that basically it's going against the oldest tenet of linguistics, which is that the signifier, there's no significance to it. Whatever means you use to convey meaning doesn't actually matter. You could swap it out for anything. And then there's this theory that came about once computer science in the 90s started taking hold, that was just aggregating languages. And they were just aggregating languages and aggregating words. And they're like, hey, like, isn't it crazy that like the word for duck in 60 languages all starts with the same sound? Maybe that's not arbitrary. Maybe there is this nested meaning within that sound. And then as soon as I get into speech science, everyone's like, yeah, that's a fucking lie. like, sure, they've had 60 languages that do that, but that's out of the thousands of languages in the world. That's completely ignoring like non-audible modalities of communication. That's completely ignoring, so many things. And so that was, at least to me, that was one of the also very exciting things, was like ending up in a field where people are talking about like, what's the actual thing that's important? What's the actual thing that like people are using in their day to day? And that's not to discredit any sort of philosophical theory, a lot of theory does end up getting utilized to start scientific inquiry, and so it still is tremendously valuable. But at the same time, it was very funny and pretty cool to like end up in a class where they're just like, yeah, these things you've been reading online, no one believes that.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, but Google says this is a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's definitely, communication theory is something I'm incredibly passionate about. And that's, like getting back, I read a book on co-articulation. Co-articulation is kind of as you go through, and all of this is to simplify things. And that's the beautiful thing and the fucked thing about language is that we're using terms to completely constrain what things are. And we constrain what things are so that we can talk to another person. But it's like Hegel talked about that as like the tragedy of language is that it's a violent act to define something because you're limiting what it could be, and so the thing is that in communication science, the whole goal is to like continue simplifying things more and more and more for researchers and for fields so that we can talk to each other about things. But it just makes it more complicated. Like the International Phonetic Alphabet is not an easy thing to memorize. And also you then realize that like the system of sounds that we have in English doesn't have the same system if you go to another language. And so you then have to learn more things. And so it's just one of those things where it's like, again, we're trying to simplify things that cannot be simplified. And co-articulation was the like mind-blowing moment that I had with linguistics where I realized that everything that I'd ever been taught was simplified for me. Basically you learn about phonemes where it's like, oh, we have individual sounds that we're producing, and this is how we can look at them. And then co-articulation is saying every single sound that you use is influencing every other sound that you use because we're never actually hearing any of them in isolation. And so there are theories about how and why that happens. Is it because of the muscles that we have? Is it because of the device that we're using to produce acoustic phenomena? Like, is that shaping one sound or another? Is there pre-programming in our brain that causes those shapes to happen? But it is just that idea that, you're not just going you're using that within a system that creates a new version of that constantly. And that, of course, sound is unique to you as a human being as well.
Of course.
And that was just like learning that stuff, just because, again, like you have these constraints put on it. It's like, oh, I learned the phonetic theory. After you learn phonetic theory, then you start getting into like phonology, which is basically phonetics, but slightly more complicated. And then I got to co-articulation and I was like, the world is a beautiful and amazing place. Like communication is mind blowing. Like the devices that we use to say words are so beautiful,
You mentioned
I don't know. It's super inspiring stuff to just constantly be learning and finding new things.
You mentioned Hegel in that, and I remember kind of learning about Hegel's dialectics theory.
Yeah,
and I just was like so obsessed with it forever. Like I just like annoyed all of my friends. Just like he just like dialectics evangelist. It was like. Anyway, I have had my philosophy nerd moment. So I think it's very fun to read and think about people that were thinking and think about thinking and
and
you can really nerd on about it.
Yeah, and that's definitely, I mean, our name is a Hegel term. And definitely like the title of the release was just leaning full into like, let's just go full philosophy nerd. And let's just like, the entire album is about decay. Let's just have the title be based upon the fact that it is us writing about decay, and just really like go full out philosophy nerd on it and title it like, we're fucking Seneca or something like that, and that was, definitely something. Very thankful that Danny is always down with whatever dumb idea I have. He's like, he forgets that we have album titles. He forgets we have song titles. He's like, what are we even calling this thing? And I'm like, it's called On the Advancement of Decay. We said that a year ago. He's like, oh, that's a cool title. Yeah, dude.
So I went to long story. We don't have to get into the details of how it happened. I did go to a Christian college. I talked about it a little bit when I made my episode about like Christian metal. Like I was definitely deep into evangelicals before I was not.
Yeah.
But I remember taking a intro to philosophy course, and it was part of the curriculum, part of like
Yeah.
what you had to take at most colleges after that.
Yeah.
And just like how biased it was, like the teacher would just like skip, like basically just like skip over any philosopher that was just like somewhat antithetical to Christianity.
Okay,
Like I think
yeah.
like mention that Karl Marx was a person, and that's all we learned about him. Like it was
Yeah.
like very much like yeah, like but you by introducing it and giving me the text and like having the library, I got so into it myself. So,
Yeah.
so thank you, Matt. So well, we have been talking for over an hour yet. So at some point we should wrap this up. But I do want to ask one last question. This is an EP you're putting out. Is it teasing a full length?
Oh, I mean, we're definitely at this point probably 5 songs written into a full length.
Okay.
As for whether or not we're gonna put one out next year, I don't know. I think we're just gonna keep plugging along. We're probably gonna put out a White Zombie cover next year. Like that's like at the top of the list of things we want to do. But as for whether or not this is teasing a full length, this was just something to do while writing the next full length. You know, it completely. I was maybe. We have 5 songs that we think are good for the next full length. We probably have 8 or 9 songs written for it. But ones that are like fully ready, we have 5, and so it's just one of those things that just keep plugging along. And this was just what we felt like doing at the time. And, sure, writing more music isn't a detour from writing music, but it definitely yeah, it's kind of just a sidetrack.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't know when we're releasing the next full length. That's yeah. I feel like 2025 is probably when we'll do something. Who knows? But yeah.
We're like in the mid 2020s already. That what the fuck?
Yeah, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Max, I had a great time. But before I let you go, I want to give the floor to you for any last thoughts that you want to get off your chest, and to give plugs. Tell people when this EP comes out, where they can find it, all those good things.
Last thoughts.
You don't have to have any if you don't have any.
Yeah, no, I feel like you should. I mean, again, as a person in the communication sciences, I would say please look into educating yourself on different communicative modalities. Sign language American Sign Language is a part of our culture that a lot of people ignore and do not think of, and people that are deaf and hard of hearing have a lot of tremendous difficulties in this world because of the fact that we don't recognize it as its own language within America. And it's something that many people all throughout the world think that if you are a part of a country, you should speak every language that is within that country. America technically doesn't have its own official nationally recognized language, so that kind of gets a little bit complicated, but it is something that, that modality is there for people to be communicating with, and also recognizing that there are lots of people in this world that have different communicative differences than you do, and be patient with that and try and educate yourself on that, because I think that's one of the most important things in this world, is just trying to communicate with people that may communicate differently than you. The amount of people that are killed by police officers because they have communicative differences that police are not trained to deal with in any way, shape, or form is absolutely horrific. And so, yeah, I would just say talk with each other and be kind to each other, and try and learn about the ways in which people communicate, because we are all here together, but we are not all the same, and try and take that into account. As for our album, EP, whatever, yeah, that's coming out December 8th. It's completely self-released. We're super excited about it. We're super proud of it. We think as like abnormal it is, we think it's one of the most cohesive things that we've done as far as a singular vision and trying to attain that and move from one thing to the next. We're incredibly proud of how it all came out.
Yeah.
And you know, you don't have to buy it. It'll be streaming. We always put everything at pay what you want on Bandcamp, so you can pay $0 the day it comes out. Thank you for having me on here.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You know?
The show operates by having guests. So, well, Max, thanks again for joining me. This was check out on the Advancement of Decay, coming out December 8th from Sublation, getting on Bandcamp. And for everyone watching at home, you know the drill. My name's Maddie, aka Beaver Mosh, signing off.